Welcome to this week's episode of the Jewish Diaspora Report. On this week's episode, we're going to look into how the Jewish people are a light unto the nations. Let's get started. Today marks the Jewish holiday of Shavuot. The holiday of Shavuot is a 2-day holiday in the diaspora, but a 1-day holiday in Israel. The word Shavuot means weeks, and it celebrates the completion of the 7-week Omer counting period between Passover and Shavuot. It is believed that the Torah was given to the Jews by God on Mount Sinai on this day more than 3,300 years ago. Every year on this holiday of Shavuot, the Jewish people renew their acceptance of God's gift of the Torah, and God, quote, re-gives the Torah to the Jewish people every year. This holiday reminds us not only about the Torah, but also about our responsibility to the higher calling, to abide by the 613 commandments that it contains. The giving of the Torah is a far-reaching spiritual event, one that touches the essence of the Jewish soul for all times. Our sages have compared it to a wedding between God and the Jewish people. Shavuot can also mean oaths, for on this day God swore an eternal devotion to us, and we in turn pledged our everlasting loyalty to Him. Of course, not every Jewish person chooses to observe the full 613 commandments found in the Torah, but as a community, we have taken a great deal of pride and responsibility in observing an important morality and ethical code. This is sometimes very burdensome to the Jewish people. There are many very challenging or time-consuming mitzvot that we are expected to adhere to. I cannot think of a better day than Shavuot, the day that the Jewish people received the Torah and God's commandments, to discuss the issue how the Jewish people have been chosen among all other nations for a special task. When we come back after this break, we're going to discuss how the Jewish people have used these morals, ethics, and other mitzvot to become a, quote, light unto the nations of the world. This is the Jewish Diaspora Report. We'll be right back. The Jewish people are often referred to as the, quote, chosen people, and that this chosenness is to be the light unto the nations. I have seen sometimes that these two aspects of Judaism are used as a negative against the Jewish people as some type of arrogance, as if Jewish people believe themselves to be somehow better than the others of the nations. This actually couldn't be further from the truth, but first let's see where the idea of this chosenness comes from. If we pass the biblical stories of the patriarchs like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and they're being singled out by God for their chosenness on an individual or familial level, the biblical book of Deuteronomy, or Devarim in Hebrew, it says in chapter 14, verse 2, quote, "For you are a people consecrated to your God. Your God chose you from among all other peoples on earth to be a treasured people," end quote. Before this, in chapter 4, verse 5 and 6, God tells the Jewish people, quote, "See, I have imparted to you the laws and rules. Observe them faithfully, for that will be your proof of your wisdom and discernment to other peoples, who on hearing of all these laws will say, 'Surely that great nation is a wise and discerning people,'" end quote. Incredibly, this has become shockingly true in the modern day. We often hear references to the, quote, Judeo-Christian beliefs and laws around the world. Think about that for a moment. An absolutely minuscule group of people living in a tiny area of the Middle East defies empire after empire trying to colonize and destroy them. But not only did they survive, they were able to provide the building blocks for many of the laws, morals, and ethics in today's Western world, thousands of years later. Also consider the fact that the Jewish people and their laws were very much against the grain in the ancient world. If you were living back in the ancient times and you heard what the Jewish people were forbidding, you would think that they were crazy. As the prophet Isaiah says in chapter 42, verse 6, quote, "God appointed you, the Jewish people, a covenant people, and a light unto the nations," end quote. This light is the light of the Torah and the morals and ethical code that it brings. One of the most well-known and practiced parts of bringing this light to the world is the practice of tikkun olam, repairing the world. The term is initially used in the Mishnah, a body of classical rabbinic teachings from around the 200 CE era. There, it refers to a social policy of legislation providing extra protection for those who are potentially at a disadvantage in the community. In reference to individual acts of repair, the phrase tikkun olam figures prominently in the Kabbalistic account of creation and its implications. The idea that God contracted the divine self to make room for his creation. Divine light became contained in these special vessels called kelim, some of which shattered due to the sheer power of the light of God. Most of the light returned to its divine source, but some light attached itself to these broken shards. These broken shards and divine light are now in the material world, and human beings are expected to find these things that are in need of fixing and repair them in order to release the sparks of divine light back to the heavens. Contemporary usage of the phrase tikkun olam shares the rabbinical concept of a concern with public policy and societal change with the Kabbalistic notion of tikkun, the idea that the world is profoundly broken and needs to be fixed by human activity. Maybe this is the reason why Jewish history has shown that diaspora communities that have spread to every corner of the world after being exiled from our land of Judah, we brought with us to these countries and regions the moral code, business innovations, and acts of tikkun olam to help those countries and regions thrive and grow. As we can see here, the chosenness or being a light unto the nations is actually intending not to be better than others, but to provide what we can in order to repair our world around us, including the world of those around us. We refuse to sit back and watch injustices happen or see things that are broken and not try to fix them. It is our mission to try and take on these difficult tasks in order to make the lives of those around us better, whether those people are Jewish or not. We can use the abilities and talents and money that we have in order to fix things, to give charity, to help those in need. In our next segment, we are going to look at a number of ways that the Jewish communities around the world have helped and been a light unto the nations. When we come back on the Jewish Diaspora Report, stay with us. In our last segment, we discussed why the Jewish community has had such a large impact and a positive impact on the world, even though it's such a tiny minority. There are countless examples of incredible ways that the Jewish people have been a, quote, light unto the nations, end quote. And sadly, we can't really mention them all here, so we'll just go over a few very important ones. Many of you may have heard the term Silicon Wadi, the Arabic or Hebrew word for valley. Israel has become a hub for international technology and Israeli startup companies. This tech hub has grown from its infancy in the 1960s until today, where it has become home to many of the latest technologies like instant messaging and autonomous vehicles. Companies like Google, IBM, Intel, and Motorola have opened facilities in Israel in order to take advantage of the incredible talent that Israel has to offer. Many of the newest technologies in the world today have begun in Israel. For instance, in the medical field, the Israeli innovated PillCam, a disposable camera the size of a pill that is much less invasive than traditional ways to find colorectal issues. The user simply swallows the pill and it provides the doctors all of the information they need. Israel is also behind the innovation of a fingertip monitor that can pinpoint people at risk of major cardiac events or even diagnose sleeping disorders. However, no one beats Israel in the green technology field. It is a natural fit for the Jewish people living in a desert climate. Israel is on the forefront of solar technologies, including technologies to cheaply and efficiently clean solar panels to improve their efficiencies. But most of all, the country who has little access to water, Israel has exported their drip irrigation technologies that improves water usage by over 90%. This can help those countries who are also struggling with their access to water. Israel is also on the forefront of water desalination technologies. This allows for countries without access to fresh drinking water to access the otherwise unusable water from the sea, remove the salt, and make it drinkable. However, this wasn't enough for the Israelis, who went one step further and created a system that allows those who do not have access to seawater the ability to create drinkable water. The latest technology from WaterGen, an Israeli company that takes water in the air, typically referred to as humidity, and transforms it to filter drinking water. This technology is already being used in various desert areas around the world, but is being used in First Nations areas where drinking water is not safe. Coupling this technology with Israeli solar panels can allow for indefinite access to clean water, even in the remotest areas. One of the last and most important places that Israel has shown itself to be leading the world is in foreign aid and support to those countries in need after natural disasters. An organization called Israel Aid has teams that head to natural disaster areas to provide medical support to local communities. Their mission statement says, "Our mission is to support people affected by humanitarian crises. We partner with local communities around the world to provide urgent aid, assist in recovery, and reduce the risk of future disasters. This included helping developing early warning systems for tsunamis in Asia. Israel is often the first people to be on the ground in a natural disaster area in order to help the local populations. In a talk that I had with an Israel Aid member, sadly I heard that they have to sometimes hide the fact that they're Israeli, depending on where they are in the world, because sadly some people will not accept the help from Jews. Instead, they're often having to use locals or find Israelis who speak Arabic in order to help those people who refuse to take help from Israel due to the geopolitical discrimination. In the end, we can see that the Jewish community has impacted the world well beyond its small numbers suggest it should. Was this always the plan for the Jewish people? How is it that such a tiny community then and now has had such a big impact on this vast world, technologically, medically, all of these things we've discussed? Even though the Jewish people have long considered themselves to be a chosen people and a light unto the nations, this is not an idea of supremacy, but one of responsibility. In spite of the anti-Semitism and persecution over the many generations, the Jewish people have never stopped trying to repair the world for all of its inhabitants. On this Shavuot, we remember the responsibility to look for ways to be a light unto the nations and to help those around us in any way that we can. We can be role models in our community, we can give back to those in need, and we can definitely not stand by as we see social injustices happening. This has been another episode of the Jewish Diaspora Report. Don't forget to check us out on social media at jdr.podcast and check out some of our other episodes on your favorite podcast source. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.